Howdy Deadheads, this is DR.KOBA, and I am continuing in my review of the 60 shows from the 60th anniversary 2025 Grateful Dead box set called Enjoying the Ride. I've been enjoying the ride. Just got back from Fish in Chicago where I was enjoying the ride there, and so the entertainment was this, which is 7/13/84 at the Greek Theater in Berkeley, California. It's a show that I hadn't quite ever heard any more than the opening part of set 2, which is the Scarlet Touch Fire portion, which is pretty famous because Touch of Grey was new, from what I understand, in 1984, and then putting it in the middle of the Scarlet Fire couplet, the duo, is anytime it's going to be something that is special. And so what we get here is something special, actually. It's a pretty good version, and it was really cleaned up well by Jeffrey Norman with the mastering. The tapes sound good on this one. I've in my tape collecting moments and times, I have 7/15/84 as like a XL cassette tape, and it has the Dark Star portion, which is the encore, and that's why this show was famous, suitably famous, because I believe there was an eclipse, and that is one of the very first times they would have played Dark Star with Brent. You could correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. I'm probably not going to get corrected, but I don't think that he had played it really maybe more than once or twice before this. And Brent rocks, love Brent, and he sounds great on it. More of that in a moment. But on this tape that I have from 7/15/84, which is also a show that should be put out, it's just as good as it's the equal of this one. Whoever taped it taped a they pasted on at the end of the tape a phone call to the radio station in San Francisco doing the Grateful Dead hour at that point in time in the 80s. This is after the show had taken place. It was the late 80s probably. And Phil was talking. They had just discovered the faces on Mars, the pictures of Mars, and he kind of expounds on the craziness of faces being on Mars, and they kind of talk about this Dark Star, and I can't remember it's not Jesse Jarno, but it's the other individual who would have done Grateful Dead hour, David Gantz, excuse me, I think it's probably David Gantz. They have a conversation about Dark Star, and they have a conversation about this night and the eclipse. And so really with this one, this is suitably famous. On the back you get a nice picture. I've never been there, never been to California, but we get a very high energy version of the Grateful Dead in 1984 here, where everyone is singing well, everyone is focused, everybody is in good spirits, and we get none of the weird off nights, off times. You can hear some things with Jerry, probably not in the best place in his life. Neither of the other guys probably for that point in time, probably just being very crazy with how they live their life and all that. And so what we get here, though, is extraordinarily high energy band. We get the 80s beat, essentially. It's kind of how I feel it. Like Mickey and Billy have like internalized the beat, and they're keeping it going from like the opening Bertha, Greatest Story. You get high energy, the great Dire Wolf. I love Dire Wolf. Dire Wolf's a great tune. Jerry gets his own little country spot there. Bobby pulls out some blues with C.C. Ryder, instead of like Walking Blues or Little Red Rooster or something. So yeah, it's just a different thing to have out there. Jerry pulls out a good loser. It's filled with good atmosphere, and he shreds some guitar there. Where we really get going is with Cassidy, and I love Cassidy. That's one of my favorite Bobby tunes of all time. But you get this very breathless take on it, and that jam at the end where they're exploring is just psyche and full of psych energy. So it just kicks things up a notch. And then the notch goes up even higher with pulling out Dupree's Diamond Blues, which would have been probably a rarity at the time. Jerry on his Mootron and stuff with that. So pulling that out from Oxamo or whatever, however you pronounce that, the third album. But we get it's a cool take on that. You don't usually get it, and then the energy just keeps going higher and higher with Hell in a Bucket, which is a new one at that time, and they are just pedal to the metal. And of course, maybe there's too much screeching happening here with at least I'm enjoying the ride at the end with Bobby going a little bit too screechy, but when you're there, it would have been cool to see. So then we kick it right into Might As Well. Jerry gets his own version of like just screeching through his guitar, and you get a very high energy set closer. Awesome set. The aforementioned Scarlet Touch Fire opens as the meat of the second set, and it's awesome. There's a very nice melody that sort of pulls the band through the Scarlet jam, and the 80s beat is there, and it's keeping things going. And they get into Touch of Grey, and it is fast, upbeat. The tempo is good. Jerry's singing well. Doesn't forget where his guitar solos are. Like, it's great. And then at the end, when they're trying to figure out there's a moment there where they're thinking on their feet and they're on stage in front of these people, and how do they get into fire? And Phil pulls them in and plays the bass line. They sort of do a little bit of a round robin, and then they settle in on a nicely burning version of Fire on the Mountain. Where do you go from there? You go to the Calypso thing, and Man Smart, Woman Smarter comes out. It's great. It's great stuff. Love to hear it. Always love hearing that. It's something different. Great. Awesome. But then we get into a very reflective mind music is kind of how I think of this stuff. Drums in space, and there's some serene, peaceful psych things happening where it's kind of just a meditative space, and they pull some very nice moments out. It's just worth hearing. The wheel comes out of space with some weird delay stuff happening with the wheel is turning, and we're back into pedal into the metal, keep going, nicely major reflections in the wheel, and that takes us into Bobby's like, well, where am I going to take this for my spot? And they pull out the other space, the other tune that could come out of space, Miracle. And they rock out, I Need a Miracle every day, man. And they do it well. They're the best band on the planet when they're sitting on stage doing this stuff. They're the best. Jerry cools it down with Stella Blue, and the ballad spot is perfectly performed and executed there. They keep it going. They don't slow down. They're acting as one unit. It's amazing. And then and Brent's the keyboard is weird. That's a weird sound. It doesn't necessarily call attention to itself, and in so much that if you were unaccustomed to hearing that, you'd be like, what are you doing? Why isn't this a standard electric piano sound? And the synthesizer electric piano sound is soft, and it's not hard edge like it becomes later in the 80s when he switches to more of a standardized piano sound, which has its more hard edge sound to it. Here's like this soft, plinky kind of thing, which I dig. I like it. It has its own character, which is you get hit or miss, and your mileage may vary on how much you like it or not. But I think it adds something here. It feels a little bit out of place on some of the material, like the more country-esque stuff, like Sugar Magnolia, where they're really pounding, and they're all pounding their instruments, and they're all doing it so well. They're really bringing the show to the close. Would have been great. they go into Dark Star next for their encore. It's a nice 15-minute chunky little version, which is great. It has this. It's not thrown off. They're not just doodling to doodle and say thank you, good night. They're playing for the cosmos in their minds, and Brent's synth now is perfect, and it's like he was just with them the whole time, and he's evolved with them. They get in some really good spaces, some weird jammy parts, and it doesn't really like go into some noise or anything that you would have heard from Dark Star in 1972 to 74 or later into the 80s. It's a different version. It's a piece of where they're at in this time, where it's more rocked out. It's the energy. I call it rock psych energy, and it's great. Has a very nicely analog feel to it. I guess that's all I'll say. But they're playing to an eclipse, and so it's it's suitably famous portion of Grateful Dead history. For that alone, I would say that this is a 10 out of 10. I of course I love the Brent band. Pretty much all of it. Anytime it's good. 1984. The stuff that I've heard, the official releases. I know that this is Jerry's probably not sounding so hot. Jerry's probably going downhill, but if he is, he's forcing it through his guitar, and if he can't sing it, he's singing it through his guitar, and the rest of the band is doing the same thing. They are on the same tracks, but they are insane. They're just off out of their minds. And so sometimes you're going to get gems, and sometimes you're just going to get people who are playing instruments. And sometimes it's not going to be good, and sometimes it's going to be awesome. You never know. It's like life itself, and that's what the Dead is. And so that's what makes their music special. And this is a special show. Dave, 7/15/84. China Doll, Out of Space. Bird Song. Come on. It's an amazing show. It has the same qualities. All the same qualities. I'm sure that they looked at this show when they were doing it. They were 7/15, and they're like, let's hang on to it. We have to put out this famous bit, which is the Scarlet Touch Fire, and it's suitably famous for a reason. The vocal qualities for Jerry's voice sounds good. I was surprised. I'm usually, there's been some other like Dave's picks from 1984. I think there's at least one of them that Jerry's voice is not so good, but his playing is good. And here, his voice is good and his playing is good. You get a rare moment where they are as good as they get. So seek this one out. I'm sure you've probably, if you're here for any reason, I'm sure you've heard this show, and I'm sure you've heard the Scarlet Touch Fire. I know they put it out in some other version, but the main takeaway here is we get the Dead on a good night, and this show sounds good on these 3 CDs. The tapes, thankfully, are good, and you get a very good show. So I'm going to keep going with this series of Grateful Dead releases. I'm looking at the 1991 show, trying to get through that with Brent and Bruce Hornsby. Another good stuff. It's all good stuff. They wouldn't have put bad stuff in the box, so it's kind of hard to fault anything here. But I would just say 80s band, plinky synth sounds, you get burning guitar, you get high energy 80s beat. You can't go wrong. So like, share, and subscribe. Have a good one.